wildfires come after Western Europe saw back-to-back heat waves, recording its hottest June on record. France is expected to see another heat wave this coming week, its fourth in 2 months. For some insight into the recent extreme weather, we can bring in Belgian climatologist Jean-Pascal van Ypersel. He's a climatology professor at the Université Catholique de Louvain. He's also a former vice chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which publishes the UN's climate reports. Jean-Pascal van Ypersel, it's good morning, and thank you as always for taking the time to speak with us. Between these repeated heat waves and forest fires, just how unprecedented is this summer for Western Europe?
Well, it's certainly not the first heat wave, it's not the first wildfires, but the scale of this heat wave and the scale of these wildfires is really exceptional. It really shows that we're not only in a fire crisis, but we are in a climate crisis, in a land management crisis, and we really need to do much better to avoid the repetition of such situations.
And obviously, these fires cause destruction and potentially harm to humans in the short term, but are there also long-term effects on the environment, since the vegetation being burned is then releasing carbon back into the atmosphere?
Yes, I mean, today, half of human-induced carbon dioxide emissions are absorbed by ecosystems on one side and the ocean on the other side. And if we burn those ecosystems, of course, the absorption capacity decreases. And if we burn them on top of that, they emit CO2, which is a greenhouse gas contributing to the warming. So it's a vicious circle. We really need to cut this vicious circle and reduce emissions coming from fossil fuel burning on the one side to prevent further degradation of the climate situation. And on the other side, we also need to adapt much better, to prepare much better for the climate that's coming and the fire weather conditions that unfortunately are associated to the warming that we are seeing and the drying around the Mediterranean in particular.
Yeah, are there also kind of more longer term effects that we could see on the environment, a sort of snowball effect from heat waves as well?
Yes, I mean, heat waves to a certain extent feed on themselves because with dry soils, which of course favor wildfires and drying vegetation, etc., it reduces evaporation and it makes rain later less probable. So it's a vicious circle. There are also effects on many animals, many ecosystems, vegetation, agriculture is suffering a lot. The production of crops will be affected. So it's really a whole range of issues which is associated with this climate extreme that we are seing now.
Are we also expecting to see more intense monsoons and hurricanes this year?
Well, that's a different issue. We know that hurricanes in general become more likely and more intense when the surface of the ocean is warmer. On the other hand, there are other conditions which favor or not hurricanes, and it is known that during an El Nino year, and we are heading towards a strong El Nino event in the coming months, the number of hurricanes, at least in the Atlantic, has a tendency to decrease. But overall, a warmer climate is associated with stronger hurricanes, and the effect on monsoon can also be important.
Scientists from the World Weather Attribution Initiative have said that that climate change is unequivocally to blame for Europe's recent heat waves. Do you agree with that assessment? And can you explain how it can be determined so soon after these events?
Of course. I mean, the group of scientists, and I know them, who do those studies are very competent and very serious people. So what they do, and now they've polished their methods because they've used those methods for years now on a number of different events, which explains why it is now possible to do it so quickly after an event. They compare with using climate models, they compare the situations, the climate situation before the effect of humans and the situation taking into account greenhouse gases. And the difference in climate and the difference in the probability of extreme events can then be compared between the two sets of simulations. And the present situation is really unheard of in a non-human disturbed climate, while it's becoming much more probable, thousands of times for some event, thousands of times more probable in CO2 induced warming climates like we have now. So we really need to reduce emissions. Otherwise, we will get into situations where, for example, the wildfires, the forest fires, cannot be handled anymore. I mean, they'll be too widespread. We really need to combine the emission reductions by getting away from fossil fuels and prepare better for drier and warmer climates.
It sounds like you think we might be headed towards a sort of point of no return. The next UN climate summit, the COP31, is going to be taking place in November in Turkey. What do you think the priorities need to be? What do we need to do to make sure that we don't get to that point of no return?
It's difficult. You know, it's the 31st climate conference at the international level. Every conference represents a very small progress in climate policy, in the coordination of climate policies around the world. But the progress at those COPs is way too small compared to what is needed. So this issue really needs to become a much higher priority for governments. They need to invest in prevention, and prevention is not only buying more Canadaires, it's reducing fossil fuel emissions, it's thinking the management of ecosystems to promote biodiversity much more. It is really attacking a much larger range of problems which are much higher political will than today. Otherwise, the planet will in part become inhabitable, like some parts of France and Spain are becoming at the moment.
Another challenge is that climate change denial is still alive and well. I mean, the man who was recently appointed by Donald Trump to lead a national climate assessment in the U.S. Has talked about climate alarmism, and he rejected the recent reports about Europe's heat wave being linked to climate change. What do you, as a climate scientist, say to people like that?
You know, it's like an ostrich putting its head in the sand. I mean, it doesn't in the face of danger. It doesn't reduce the danger. It just makes people, or some people, those who are really not very clever in a sense and very short-termist, not seeing the danger. But we need to recognize the danger is there and we need to act. And it's still possible to act. The IPCC has been very clear that prevention, both through emission reductions and through better adaptation policies, is possible. Prevention is possible, but it needs political will, it needs budgets, it needs political priority, much more than what has been done to now. Now, if some in the US or elsewhere don't want to recognize that, they will simply pay the price later. Because every euro, every dollar we don't invest today in decarbonization, in prevention and adaptation and emission reductions means that many more euros or dollars will have to be spent later to pay for the damages.
Here's hoping those ostriches will pull their heads out of the sand. Thank you again so much for joining us this morning. That's Belgian climatologist Jean-Pascal van Ypersel.